Nerd On the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio.
The budget is $106.2 million. Gross is not there because Netflix. The Rotten Tomatoes.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Nerd On, the podcast you didn't need, but by golly gee, you deserve it. And where every level of nerd are welcome.
Oakley listenerinos.
From Elf Town, from Orcville, from Humans, Placer. I don't know. The names are all
Wow.
dumb. But we're going to jump into and get introducing to the topic of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Your English so good right now.
My
Very
English
nice.
very good right now. But as Neil Gaiman said, fiction is the lie that tells the truth. Straight from South Central LA, David Ayer takes his signature hard streets drama into the land of fantasy. Today, we fulfill a listener's episode request, and this listener is Mr. Chase Rodin, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing Rodin correctly. Please let me know in the comments below, baby, if that's wrong.
They're
I like
active
to
on our
pronounce last
social
name.
media. What's up,
Exactly.
Chase?
What's up?
Hey.
And they emailed us for this request saying, I recently watched the film Bright on Netflix and enjoyed it better the second time. I was wondering if maybe you guys would do a podcast on the film one day. I'd love you guys forever and always if you did. So cash the check, Chase. Love us every day, forever.
I do want to make a shout out
Keeping
real
a
quick.
note of this.
Yeah.
We do hear the request. If you want to submit topic request, go on over to our website, nerdon.tv/contact. There is a contact sheet and send them over. We save them all. So when we are sitting down to figure out what our topics are, we look at that. We always look at it and be like, okay, this would fit perfectly right here. So thank you, Chase, so much. And thank you for everybody who has sent in topic requests.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want us to watch Teletubbies? You want us to watch that weird niche French film you thought of like
Or
5
Hot
years
Rod?
ago? Or nope, not that one
Yeah,
though.
or Hot
But yeah,
Rod.
go to our website and fill out that form and let us know.
Teletubbies?
Or Hot Rod.
My brain works in mysterious ways.
You started something.
Yes.
I regret it immediately.
But yes, the marquee topic is Netflix Bright film. Let's introduce the host. My name is Tom.
I'm Caitlin.
And I am Josh, and this episode is brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation that is powered by Patreon.
Patreon.
As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks like early access to these episodes. You get bonus episodes that nobody else hears. You get access to secret channels on the secret Discord server. I mean, it's not really that secret. It's open to the public,
secret.
but you get secret servers. Channels.
It's like Clark Kent's secret identity. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
There's all
put on
sorts of fun
glasses,
perks.
But it's like, yeah,
Is that him?
yeah, it's him.
But yeah, check that out, nerdon.io/Patreon, and check out that
Discord.
Discord. nerdon.io/Discord. And a huge shout out to our partners, Apogee Electronics, who provided us with these microphones, the Hype Mic, the ultimate podcasting microphone. Do check it out. I cannot recommend their podcast, this microphone, so much, and their podcast, Clear Mountain Domain.
Oh, yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah,
it's a
really
wonderful
good, actually.
podcast with amazing stories from the music industry, from Bob Clearmountain, who is a legend. But check that out. And a huge shout out to Odyssey Headphones, who have recognized
Yeah, check it out.
Officially recognized our statement. If your ears were mouths, they'd taste like butter.
Taste like butter.
Go
Look
check
for it
out
on
their
the
social
internet.
media. It is real.
Look for it.
Just
been
last
set in
week, Tom was
stone
like, if they
forever.
do that,
I'm going to fire their marketing manager. And you know what? They did it. So everyone out there, tell them who sent you there. When you just do hashtag taste like butter.
tastes like
Yes.
butter. I do like
Hashtag
that on
tastes
one
like
of their
butter.
posts. It was hashtag butter.
Well, I thought that was hashtag nerd, hashtag butter. I'm like, nerd butter?
No,
That's my
walk away
kind of
from that one
language,
quickly.
baby.
Walk away.
No.
Next
It
segment.
tastes so good.
I'm done with
Okay.
housekeeping. Move
Yep,
on.
okay, good.
All right. So holy poop. You know, I feel like it's been such a long time since we've actually done one of these episodes where at the end of it, we are actually going to rate it. So that's going to bring us into our next two topics or segments of the show, which, so again, we're going to rate at the end of the show, which is going to bring us now to Guess That Grunt.
Guess and the grump.
No.
Guess and the grump. You gotta guess.
Get it, group.
I want everyone to know that Bright, the film, has like heavy metal punk stuff, and then Caitlin just turned it to Carmen Sandiego for some reason.
You're welcome.
But so yes, if you're brand new to the show, Guess That Grump is going to be a segment where we are going to go around the digital screens because it's also on video, and we are going to guess who is going to have the lowest score out of 0 out of 5. Yeah, I did. And no matter how high the number is, because it typically tends to be with this particular group, they are going to be the grump for the week. And if Corey was joining us today, which he normally does, but this time he's what Josh says, dealing with family. And no, actually, he's celebrating his life, which is something we should also do with our lives.
Yeah. How dare you make that so syrupy sweet out of nowhere? How dare you, Tom?
I actually have the Nerd On Nation votes.
Ooh, there it is. I was
Look
just
at you.
hopefully buying time to explain that, but thank you for saving the day, Josh. What can the Nerd On Nation people do to get involved with the grump?
The Nerd On Nation members, we do post polls for when we are going to be able to do Guess That Grump, and you have the opportunity to participate in the Guess That Grump. But should we make our host guests first?
Yes, we should. So I'll go first since that never changes, and it's a very stagnant script that I read off of. And I'm going to guess Caitlin is going to be the grump.
Okay.
Real quick, everyone pull back the veil. Pull back the veil. She was like, "Did Tom suggest this episode?" She said it just like that. She said it as if she was like an anime antagonist.
Who I
villain.
kill?
I love when I said, "Did Tom suggest this episode?" It's like, "Did Tom suggest this episode?"
Just
There you
like
go,
that.
see?
I feel like those are
I
two
heard it that way.
different.
She said it as if she was Sindel from Mortal Kombat, which she has played before, and it affects me and offends me. And I'm melting as we speak.
If
Wow,
you're watching
okay,
the video
anyway.
version, I hope you can see Caitlin's like just aghast, like,
But why?
what have I
Oh
done
my Lord!
to you?
What did I do to offend you in such a way? What did I do?
Yeah,
What did I do, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta understand.
Brah. Anyway, all right, Tom. I actually thought it was gonna be you. So
Oh,
The spiteful vote.
this was my pick all along.
Oh.
Actually,
Still spiteful, just,
It's a barn
During
burner,
search.
Josh.
Pivotal.
1 vote for Tom, 1 vote for Caitlin.
oh man. I am going to give it to, I'm going to give it to Caitlin.
Ooh.
I can
And
feel it coming
the Nerd On
in
Nation
here tonight.
has voted. And it is a vote for mainly Caitlin.
What?
And 1 vote on Tom.
So,
Mainly
I'm gonna say
Caitlin.
2 for Tom,
Wow.
3 for Caitlin, 1 for
Man.
none for Josh.
I feel like I'm like getting roasted. It's
You
so
are.
hot. I got to put on some more chapstick. Jeez.
She had a little
Is
bit
it
of
getting
pepper.
hot in here, or is it just my lips?
It's
She had
just
some-
the amount of roast that I'm receiving.
She had some fresh cracked pepper on her eggs. That's too
Pepper.
spicy.
Gudetama also, just so
Pepper.
y'all know.
So that tells us who's going to go first in terms of revealing our rating numbers. So Josh will go first, then me, then Caitlin. Next, our segment will be our complete spoiler of that, which is our initial reactions, aka our first impressions of the film, which will give a little insight into our rating. So, how about you, Caitlin, since it's so highly contested, of why it shouldn't be you?
So, all I had heard about this movie for the longest time
It was bright.
was that, huh?
it was bright.
I mean, yes, that is the name of the film, but that people weren't fond of it, and I didn't know why. I saw it, and I got pretty hooked in several
Critics
times.
weren't fond
I
of
was
it.
going to say
People were fond
there's a
of it.
huge
The people I knew were not fond of it.
critics.
So
then.
the people within my circle at the time that it came out were not huge fans of it. Let's just say that. But having watched it now, there's a lot about it that I really liked. There are a couple things about it that I wish would have come across differently. But so many of the characters were really cool. And like, I wish that we had had a little more time with them. So I'm going to leave it that surface level for now, because we're going to get into a lot.
Yeah, because we're still in spoiler-free
Spoiler-free territory.
city limits.
Yep.
I just got to keep it,
Population 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Josh, you want to go? No, Josh. I talk too much.
He said Josh faster.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. I remember seeing the trailers for this, and I was super excited because you've got things that I like. I like gritty, like kind of cop movies, that kind of grittiness. And then you've got fantasy, and you put them
There's
together,
a reason
and I'm
we
like,
didn't pick you, Josh.
huh?
There's a reason we didn't pick you, Josh.
Oh, you don't know that.
Do you like eggs and grits?
But also, a friend of mine is friends with Max Landis. And so when I saw this announced, I was like, fucking Max Landis just selling all his scripts and all that kind of stuff. So when I saw it, I liked it. I liked it. There are things
that's just such a question mark.
We'll get into it later. There was a lot about it that I really liked, that I was like, yes, that's so cool. That is a really neat idea. That is so cool. I liked it.
He says with his hands up and brows furrowed.
Very succinct. So last for me, I remember seeing this, and I remember this coming out, I believe, right after Suicide Squad.
Oh.
And I was just like, there's this interesting thing that happens with comic book tentpole films, is that the director will like just turn around and make another film that's just like not it at all. Like I remember when like Christopher Nolan was like, okay, cool, Batman Begins, and now magic people. And I was like, cool, Dark Knight, and now your brain is a crime scene. It's like, excuse, what is happening? And then so like, comparatively to that is like Jon Favreau, here's Iron Man, now Jungle Book. It's like, okay, all right, I kind of see it, baby, but I don't know. So David Ayer, and I actually worked on the set for Suicide Squad for a little bit of the additional photography, and got to meet the dude on several occasions. He's a really nice guy. But I realized after watching this, like the kind of movie or film that like is kind of presented a lot of the time makes me just be like, ugh, I don't want to watch these kind of things. And then when I start watching it, I'm just like, man, this shit just represent the culture. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just always into it because like, and this happened since Harsh Times. That was like the first David Ayer film that I was like, okay, this is like a really, not a great world to live in. And this is why it is. And, he has a formula. He has a style where it's always like the two characters that are like outside of whatever system they're in. So it's always like cops and, drugs and gangs and stuff like that. And, he wrote, I think he wrote Training Day, and he also wrote SWAT, and also wrote Street Kings. And I think he wrote the first Fast and Furious, and I was just like, so there's a lot of LA love that he has, and he also has a military background.
I think
so
read he lived in South Central for a little bit.
He ran away from home and lived in South Central with his cousins or something like that.
Oh wow.
So like he fully indoctrinated into like LA lifestyle, which was like, it's cool to see that at like, the nth degree. If like you got Baz Luhrmann who's like emotions, you have David Ayer who's like LA, and it's like, okay, oh yeah, we get it, baby, because you always see that same LA bridge, the one I'm talking about, between Frogtown and downtown. When watching this, I watched it on a whim the first time I watched it, and it was because my mom only likes action movies that melt your brain and you don't interact with it. And so I think it was during Thanksgiving or Christmas. I was like, you want to watch this? And she's like, sure. And I watched it. And I was like, oh, it's not that bad. And then me being a divorced kid, like a child of divorced parents, I had to spend the next part of the holiday at my dad's place. And guess what he wanted to watch? Bright. So I was like, well, I'm getting a double feature of the same movie. But no, I walked away. There's a lot to love. There's a lot of things you can critique out of it, but it's kind of, you have to ask yourself, what does the film want to achieve and what does it want to be versus
Yeah.
what do you want it to be, and where it can go versus what it wants to go. So
Yeah.
I think it's
also, I'm sorry, Tom, but like
cool.
if you go through like IMDb and Anytime, like even when it first dropped, the reviews were very like, I mean, it was like audience super high, critics very low. And for me, I enjoyed it and I didn't understand, like even going through reading reviews of like, oh, I didn't feel that way. So it's just very interesting to just see the stark contrast of how people feel about it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of and we'll get into it, and I want to talk about it later when we get into the breakdown of everything. Because I delved into a handful of video essays that just did nothing but shit all over it, and I'm just like, I agree, but also I disagree because I think you're being just facetious to be facetious. So that brings us to our next two parts, which are going to be our brief synopsis and then also our production. And we did not decide who's going to do the brief synopsis. So Josh, do you want to do it or no?
Oh golly, let me gather it.
And everyone at home, just to let you know, this is still a spoiler free, so the brief synopsis will not, relinquish any information that destroys the plot of the film. But you can go watch it on your local streaming service, aka Netflix, if you got the Skrilla for that.
I haven't.
Uh-huh. Nice.
In an alternate present day, humans, orcs, elves, and fairies have been coexisting since the beginning of time. Two police officers, one a human, the other an orc, embark on a routine night patrol that will alter the future of their world as they know it. Battling both their own personal differences as well as an onslaught of enemies, they must work together to protect a young female elf and a thought-to-be-forgotten relic, which in the wrong hands could destroy everything.
Ta-da! That's really good. Cool. So we'll move on from that. Go on to the production.
Okay. So this was distributed by Netflix, who have done Beasts of No Nation, Roma, and Okja. The director was David Ayer, who did End of Watch, Fury, Tax Collector. The producers are Eric Newman, who did Dawn of the Dead, Children of Men, In Time, Brian Unclis, who did Hunger Games, I, Tonya, Birds of Prey, Ted Sarandos, who did Okja, Death Note, and The Do-Over. And the writer for this was Max Landis, as we have said in a little bit earlier, who did American Ultra, Chronicle, and Mr. Right. The cast includes Will Smith, who you know from Men in Black, I Am Legend, Hancock, Joel Edgerton, who did Warrior Loving, Boy Erased, Noomi Rapace, who did Prometheus, the Millennium series, Sherlock Holmes, Game of Shadows, Lucy Fry from 11/22/63, Mr. Church, The Preppy Connection, Edgar Ramirez from Domino, Gold, and Point Break, and Ike Barinholtz from The Hunt, the Lego Movie, the second part, and Neighbors. The release date was December 22nd, 2017. Runtime is 118 minutes. The budget is 106.2 million. Gross is not there because Netflix. The Rotten Tomato score.
Because reasons.
Because Netflix. Rotten Tomato score is 23% for critics and 83% for the audience. So that's a pretty big gap
I want
what people think of it.
I want to create some quantification because Netflix doesn't release like, the numbers, but they say like how many people watched it on opening weekend. And I think they said it was over 100,000 viewers were watching it that day. So whatever it was equivalent to having an opening weekend of like 150, 180 million.
Wow. Okay.
But it was also enough for them to order a sequel pretty soon after.
Mm-hmm. So
Wait, is that still happening?
Yeah.
It was probably in production.
They announced they announced that they're in negotiations with a director.
All right. Okay.
And then also with the critics' response, it is 109 critics and then 19,380 audience who put in that thing.
Oh.
So when I said, Caitlin, your friends probably are critics because it's overwhelmingly how many audience members liked it compared to how many non-audience members or
That's
critic
fair.
members.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's very interesting, and we'll get into it very shortly. So that's all it for the spoiler-free city limits. Now we are in spoiler-full county.
It's gonna get
We're gonna
heavy
go,
with spoilers.
yes, we're gonna go do our favorite parts, our favorite characters, and our qualms, and then we'll finally rate it. But then this is a chance for us to dive in. So, who wants to jump in, baby?
Oh man, the elves.
Okay.
When they come into the titty bar and they start wrecking people, and they're just like federal agents are like tissue paper ripping through everybody. They got that like serious like you don't even matter to me face going on, marching through everything and those clunky heels.
I love that they dubbed Beverly Hills as elf elf country of like
I know. It was
I kind of enjoy it because, I mean, obviously the film is trying to have a little bit of a racial conversation of like the disparity between different neighborhoods and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And like having, we're not, us people who live in LA are no stranger to Beverly Hills, but me having worked there for like a considerable amount of time and seeing like, just to like when I worked there and I was getting paid like a lot more money than I'm getting paid now, like having a $30 lunch every day wasn't weird.
Yeah.
It was like,
which is
wow.
insane.
I was like, wow, like this is what money is like. And then like, and like going into parking structures, like parking for work, I was like, okay, you can park in the parking structure, then you go into your building. It's like, no, you just stop and then someone valets your car. And I'm like, that's normal. And you pay for that every month, and it's like over $600.
So you don't have to walk an extra 10 to 15 minutes, Tom.
It's crazy because to me, and people who listen who know me personally are always like, hey, yo, what's the parking situation like? Because I hate having to find parking to go to a function and do something. So
it's hard.
Elftown being Beverly Hills is
very fitting
to me. Yeah, in a way where you're trying to talk about privilege and you're trying to talk about hierarchy and class. So go on.
And relating it to things that we like, that we have covered on, like Lord of the Rings, like when you see the elves where they live and you compare it to real life, you're like, oh, of course it's Beverly Hills.
Oh yeah, of course. it's like almost they have like magicked nature to stay at the best optimal like season temperature, everything.
Yeah.
And then there it's like astroturf and gold like traffic bumpers on the median. Like,
well, it's like what the Shield of Light guy was trying to say, where it's like a majority of brights who are people who are powerful enough or chosen ones to carry a wand, because if you carry a wand, you explode, are elves. And isn't it kind of weird that elves run the world? Also, they're the bright. So it's like the system works in their favor because of some, predisposed, prophecy that they say like they're the superior ones, and orcs have to be like the lower class, humans are the lower class, and stuff like that. So, go ahead.
I was very tickled about fairies a little bit, but I gotta say, my favorite thing was seeing a dragon just flying in the background.
Yeah.
We didn't even bring it up. Boy, do I want to know more about that.
Or the centaur people.
Yeah, like they just very casually dropped in. It definitely helped to make the world feel more fantasy. To like, there's a centaur over there, and like, I'm not really sure what that one over there is. I know there are orcs, I know there are elves, I know there are fairies. A dragon, hi. They did a good job of like dropping things in everywhere that made it feel a little more fantasy, but also could like get away with like driving down the street and it's all humans primarily in certain sections too.
I hate to keep doing and propagating the stupid battle between Marvel and DC, but you guys are familiar with the memes of Marvel versus DC. Like, they show like How to Train Your Dragon as a Marvel, and then Game of Thrones Dragon is a DC, where it's like gritty and dark and blah blah. And so for me now, I just thought about it, you're like a dragon's flying in the background. I'm like, oh, so like Onward is the Marvel version, and then Bright is like the DC version.
I was gonna say that. Yes, it really is.
And it is kind of like that, where it's just like this alternate take on modern society with fantasy creatures involved. And honestly, a lot of the criticism that happens in the film are primarily because people are like just logic gaps. Like, why does the Alamo happen if orcs are around? Why do fairy lives not matter is a thing when you have elves and you have dragons and you have all these other things? Like, how does human civilization happen since orcs and everyone has been around for 2,000 years. And if you think about it, quote unquote, logically, it's like we don't even have that much recorded history of 2,000 years ago. So how do people remember, like, like right now it's debated if Jesus Christ of Nazareth was a real person or not, right? Like what's recorded history and how reliable is it? So having orcs and elves and the Stark Lord character and still have like a very modern LA. There's still, Poison and his gang. South Central is still South Central. Like Beverly, like just those kind of things that have stayed or remnants of our of reality have worked in tandem with the fact that like a whole new species of people we coexist with. And I think to me that's like it kind of quote unquote breaks the world building, but also it shouldn't take away from the film's kind of conversations it's trying to start. I think it's interesting. There's a lot of people at large who downplay like kind of what David Ayer and I think the filmmakers were trying to do. And to me, knowing what David Ayer does, it's very fun to see it. So it's just interesting to see like, oh yeah, like fairies are like kind of like pests and stuff like that. And it's like, if you think of it in the lore of fantasy creatures and beings, like where do fairies lie in it? And it's like, I think a little bit of like Legend of Zelda, where like, listen, it's like, shut the fuck up. No one cares about you, Midna. Or shut the fuck up. And so anyways,
Navi.
So yeah, Navi, Midna, they're all the same character. They're all the same. Talk to you, give you advice about the story that you're like, no, Midna's a bae. So, but she's also annoying. Josh?
Fair.
I like the dynamic between Will Smith and Joel Edgerton's characters of like I like their first shootout. I think it's fun when he's like, you choose now to be awkward.
How'd you make a shootout awkward?
Yeah.
How's your holes?
I thought it was a really cool scene to further the world of when they are taken by the orcs and they're in that scene and you're kind of getting
church.
Yeah, you're getting, I loved the set, but I also love just you get to see different kinds of like orcs in terms, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's like the different personalities that they just happen to be orcs and they have different personalities. I thought that was cool. It was very interesting to see, well, what if it was a gang that was orcs? And the different, I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of the word, but they have different things that they do, their own, I can't think of the word. I totally forgot the word.
Discourse?
No.
Lifestyle?
I'll think about it. I'll figure it out.
TikTok.
What does it have to do with?
No,
is it
their
like
own,
it's culture based?
Yeah, their own like culture based things that they do. It's a common word. Why am I forgetting it?
English is hard sometimes.
English is
you're uncultured. So
go ahead and move forward.
No, I'll say one real quick thing of like any of the faults that happen in the film, I will actually hands down be like, I think Joel Edgerton, Jacoby, Nick Jacoby really saves the day a lot of time. Like, he's able to emote pretty well in all that prosthetic.
Even with all that prosthetic going on.
Like, that's something with like a Ron Perlman from Hellboy, gets away with and is able to do. And it's like, even though you have a giant jaw on your face, like everything is in the eye. But something that happened with, it's when Ward is sent to kill Jacoby for the rest of the cops. And he's like, how do you know it's a different guy? And then his nose flares up. Obviously, it's little effects, but it's that moment where he's like, the smell, like, and this is what I have to deal with all the time. And I was like, to me, I thought it was a really good moment because it is those things of like, you never listen to the people who are marginalized, and the orcs are those people. And the film really does try to serve that orcs are the amalgamation of all these communities in LA that are just like seen as lesser than. And Jacoby's journey through having to be a good guy, not being respected by his people, and also being hated by the people he needs to make good on. I always go back, and again, I'll say this in a weird way. as a kid, I really loved Batman. As an adult, I'm really starting to fall in love with Superman a lot more because of that refugee, that outsider story of like, no matter what good you do in the world, like it's just not good enough for other people. And I really enjoyed like him becoming blooded. You know what he has to go through. He files down his teeth. He's called Round Tooth. Like those things, and he's called a traitor all the time. And even though it gets him access to orc communities, it's not without its sacrifice, its price. And it's really interesting to have Will Smith, who, is knock knock, or I mean, surprise everyone, he's black. But like he's a police officer, and he's the one that says like, fairy lives don't matter today. To be that character who, kind of vessels the thesis of the film of what lives really mean and different people's lives and how we appropriate cultures and stuff like that, in a way where I thought it was fun because Will Smith is also very charismatic, and in his later years he's been playing off this more like angry character, not much of the happy crazy like what's happening Men in Black kind of character, which tends to happen in his earlier career. But now he's more like, I've seen the world, I don't like it, and I don't gotta deal with you. Like when he comes up and like Poison's gang comes up and he has the shotgun, it's like, motherfucker, what? And I'm like, oh shit. Like it's really cool to see, the Fresh Prince turn to like this South Central king, in that way.
I mean, it's it kind of delivers on a it looks surface level. It's kind of, I mean, it is gritty, but it's also a buddy cop film, which I dig about it. But also I love the final scene where he's like, don't talk, don't speak. And then he just goes on this just like word vomit. And then finally he goes and he delivers it as like what they want to hear of like, there is no wand.
That was very painful to get through.
I mean, that's almost such the T of like a buddy cop movie of like the two people that did all the work have to make the higher ups feel like they're comfortable and they can't explain this to the press and there's no paperwork. And I was like, that's such a buddy cop like trope, which is really fun. Kaylin, so we've been talking about it, but is there like a favorite part that we want to like hone in on, or favorite parts?
Anything to do with how people react to the wand. That was what gave me like
life.
The weight of the importance of the wand. Like, because it wasn't until like I kind of knew that the cops were kind of like corrupt. You could already get that kind of feel, but it wasn't until like everybody started reacting to it of being like, okay, we're just going to kill him. We're going to kill him. It's fine because we have a wand. Like, why would we do anything else other than kill this person to make this go away? And then when the gangs start trying to get it, and also seeing Poison like explain why he wants that wand
to walk again.
It's like they're for selfish reasons, but not. It's not like he's like trying to take over the world or like he wants to expand, the gang territory or whatever. He just doesn't want to have a stoma and like out of his stomach all for the rest of his life. He wants to be able to walk and like have
make
a more
love to his
life.
old lady.
Yeah, like he wants normal life stuff.
I mean,
and
that's the commentary upon like why crime I think exists, and I think that's something that's not talked about a lot. Is like there's a criminal justice system, there's like crime, there's gangs, there's law enforcement, but I have always been a big proponent, and I think the show The Wire really explains it really well, where it's like crime only really exists because the current system doesn't work, and it doesn't work for everybody. And so like this wand, like you have the police who want it, exactly to your point, like they want it so that they can get money, they can do whatever they want. And then, the gangs who are always seen as like, oh, these guys just want to kill people, these guys just want to cause problems, like they want it to help their families out, to take care of themselves.
They want it for a different quality of life. It's not like to do violent things. It's just like, I just want to be able to walk. I want to be able to buy my groceries and not stress out or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
then the elves come in, and then that's where it's like, it's explaining like the various classes and everything, but like the elves want it so that they can essentially do the like, I'm going to be the trillionaire, like, and all of you are going to be under my foot. Like that's
to be a master race to control everything.
Yeah. It's totalitarian. It's a little scary, but it was cool. Like that made the like severity of the wand feel more real, and it gave it like the weight of importance that I think if they didn't do it the way that they did it with the wand, I wouldn't have cared about it. I would have been like, okay, cool, you got a magic stick. Good job.
I also like the effect that it's just bright ass stick that like bleeds.
This bright ass stick.
Because like, you've seen wands, and I've always been like, it's a stick. It's a stick.
Dick.
And like Harry Potter actually, for all its credit, it's like this one has a dragon's, core in it. It has a phoenix feather in it. I'm like, cool. Like it's not just a stick. Like
there's something unique about it.
Yeah, where in Onward, it's just like it's a splinter that you could magic and make into a bigger stick. And I'm like, but it's a stick. And
it is a stick.
And here it's like, oh, this looks like crystalline, maybe. Like when you grab it, it like glows of like the bright's color, and like a human bright has red, maybe, and it bleeds, and like it looks cool. It looks like it holds power. And the idea, like, yeah, if you lose your stick, then someone else can have your stick. And then, but this is like if someone not supposed to have the stick, then they explode. I'm like, there's
power
reason to it.
Yeah,
It's like one of the better MacGuffins in film like history that I think I've seen. That actually like pertains to the plot, why things are happening, but also like it allows it to explore a little bit, take a little remix on like the idea of what that thing is.
I don't think I agree that it's one of the better ones, but I do think it was good for this movie.
I think it's better than a box that glows. And you don't know what's in it.
Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about Pulp Fiction.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that. So that
yeah,
makes
it's
sense
a
why I
box
wouldn't
that
know what
glows,
that
and
is.
that's all you see. So,
but I mean, Anyway, what else?
I like I think the overall thing that I like about the movie is I can't think of a moment where you're like, oh, they could have put. What I mean is like, so the world, they built the world. They took something that, oh, what would this be like in the fantasy world? And it's like, it's not too far fetched in a sense of like, oh, okay, there's this. It's not like they're hitting you in the face with, yeah, it's a fantasy film. It is what it is, but it's like, they're not like, it's not like watching Onward where it's like, oh, it's so fantasy, but it's like, this is like,
it's just one step away from reality instead of like several steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Where it's
like that guy swinging the sword? Downtown Hollywood.
No, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, and that's the cool thing. Like, I think David Ayer does a really, really good job of telling you what the world feels like. Like, if you like, you can close your eyes, and be like, that's I know how that is. Whereas other people who have like, and that comes a lot with like territory of like just shooting good coverage and then also shooting good like establishing shots. Being like, okay, we're in this part of LA, we're in this part of LA, or we're at least in this part of a city that's not LA. You can just be like, oh, this is the dirty part, this is the clean part, this is the ratty apartment that I look a lot like the ones I first lived in when I first moved to LA. So I was like, interesting.
Yeah. Very real.
I was like, I see that.
I just realized, so the opening sequence, the credits, I really enjoyed because you get all the graffiti and like, even like, you're just getting a lot of coverage, a lot of B-roll almost, that it's like, it's giving you exposition, which I like. I like well done exposition where they're just showing me. They're showing me the world. They're showing me graffiti. They're showing me like what kind of world we're probably living in. And I dig that a lot when it's not just like a character coming in and being like, this is like the real world, but in the fantasy. They're just showing us. And I dig it.
Yeah, and I think there is a credence to having opening title credits versus not, and how well the two kind of serve the story in terms of a convention versus a contrivance. And it's really cool to kind of think like they use artwork that is very inspired in LA. And one thing also I want to shout out is one of Josh and I, Josh and I both know somebody who was in the film with his band. And it's the punk band that they first go to before the titty bar. and they're called Corrupted Youth. Everyone check them out.
Hey.
They are in East LA, because I got to make sure it's right, because David Ayer always represent them East LA people. And our friend, I'm going to shout him out, just to give his name, Raul Cuellar. He's a dope ass dude.
Such a cool dude.
Everyone calls him Giggles because he's very ticklish. But he's just like the most metal punk dude.
You wouldn't, like, if you just heard him and you just talked to him and you didn't see him, you wouldn't expect that he would be so metal.
Yeah. And I
Then
remember
you see.
I remember when like the movie was like slowly coming in, and like you started seeing the trailers for it, and I remember seeing like Instagram pics of the band and him, and then all this orc prosthetics. I'm like, is this going to be a new music video? This is wild. And then I was like, oh, they're in the movie. And it just makes a lot of sense because David Ayer comes from that part of town in LA. So it's like, again, I really had to give it credit to where credit's due of like, you know, you have Ryan Coogler who's going to like represent Oakland as much as he can, where you have David Ayer is going to just be like, I'm going to bring as much East LA and the LA culture and South Central and everything like that as much as I can. The parts that aren't, you know, Hollywood and, you know, the Valley and the Pier, but it's like, this is where he grew up. And I really enjoy that he's able to kind of put that palette, that texture on top of the story that he's working within. Because this film could have also taken place in New York and it would have been, you know, pretty similar, but, you know, putting his own culture and flavor into it, I think is something that a director should strive to do a little bit more, because it feels like they have personality other than just being subservient to the studio and the script.
Yeah.
But yeah, favorite parts, if I can shoot them off real quick, I think any part where I enjoy the buddy cop aspect of Ward and Jacoby, of them, you know, having banter. It's like, I think you're missing out some love, which kind of doesn't make any sense because his wife is pretty loving looking, but you just don't see them not have sex. But like, the idea is like, give me is like, this is the face of someone who's really upset. It's like, give me the face of someone who's driving to work and shut the fuck up. And it's like, that's the face right there. And it's like that kind of shit. I do like the, you know, the conflict that Ward has to, like, I don't want this diversity pick in my car. He got me shot. But I won't be a corrupt cop. I won't be a snitch because there is a sense of loyalty, if not, you know, honor amongst, you know,
Well, he said he would be done being a street cop if he ever snitched. Like, if he ever snitched on him, his job is essentially over already.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's an honor.
I mean, yeah, it's honor among thieves in that sense, where it's like, even if you do deplorable things that you don't do, there are some things you don't do. I really enjoyed Numi Rapace a lot as like a villain. Also, real quick, shout out to like Tika turning, you know, the assassin into like the most decorative wall art I've ever seen in my life. Like, that looked so cool.
I was so confused by that.
I remember watching the first time and then rewatching and be like, is she like that? Is she just look like that all the time? But you see through flashback that Tika turned her into that, which to me is like one of like, and the cool thing about David Ayer is like when he's allowed to bring in a little bit of the Latinx and Chicano art styles, it's like he does real beautiful looking things. I think he just needs to take some time to do it. Like, give him another like 4 more months of pre-production to do it, and it would look really cool. But you know, it's like a run and gun, fast, lean film. Because like I thought she looked super cool the way she was like trapped in the wall in that sense. I was like it looked. I want to see more of that. You know, like more of this like creepy
confused by
stuff.
it because I thought it was part of the, like, they were saying culty things, and it was like the
Inferni.
The Inferni. You had the Shield of Light. So I was like, oh, this must be the thing that they're worshiping, and that's why they're worried. I had no idea that was like a person until later, and then my brain was like, why is it this shape? Why not just make her like stuck in the wall as like a that was just a confusing moment for me. I was like, wait, are you a mannequin? Are you you're human? You're human.
Yeah, I had
you're
that
an
same.
elf.
I had that same confusion when like Layla slices her throat, and I'm like, but why? But what did the wall person do to you? Like the wall person,
But she didn't catch the traitor.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, she was practically dead. Like, there was no way for them to do anything about it unless she got her wand back, and I think that's an improbability at this point. You know, it's like I gotta kill everybody here so there's no witnesses and all that stuff because at least the female elves that have blonde hair have like a sisterhood bond kind of feel.
Mhm.
And so like to me it's kind of like, oh, that sucks. And why would she give a random assassin her wand? You know, like there had to have been and maybe I'm
Closeness.
filling in the blanks a little bit and apologizing for the film too much. But to me, there has to be like a bigger reason for that other than just like, oh, here's another blonde person here to just have a wand. It's like, why, you know? So
Yeah, they were definitely like closer. But yeah, that was definitely a moment of confusion though.
To me, it comes back
It's
to
very cool art. Like looking at it, I was like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing. Then I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at though.
I wouldn't mind having that adorned into an art studio if I had one. But like it comes back at the end where Layla and Tika are it's like, come back, sister, come back, and it's like even all this stuff has happened, like she still wants her to come back, and it's a little heartbreaking because it's just performed really well on Numi's part. So I think that's most of my favorite parts. I mean, I could talk about a lot of things I liked, but those were my favorite parts.
Should we go on to favorite characters?
Favorite characters. So one, I mean, I feel like if it's not Ward and Jacoby,
I would say just pick 2 characters.
But one has to be a side character that's not Ward and Jacoby.
Yeah.
And Jacoby and Ward are not one character.
Yes.
So Caitlin, go ahead.
So Jacoby for the main. And for side, I actually kind of want to give it to that bald elf dude. He was horrifying. Yeah.
Hiding underneath the table.
Like, yeah. Oh my God. When we got to that scene of him hiding under the table, I literally out loud went, oh shit. Like, he was terrifying.
Pulls out the foosball pole out of his body and just comes back.
And then he's like, and then you have him like standing there all broad-shouldered in the rain, like, I'm coming for you, bitch. After he takes off the flaming jacket, like you're just like, Jesus, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Terminating this bitch.
Yeah, seriously.
Josh?
It's gonna be Nick. I liked his journey. I liked how he wanted to be a cop, and he is a cop. It's hard for him, but he's also got that. Well, he's also an orc, and it's like he's not enough of either to be considered either, and that's his struggle. And so it's nice to see at the end where he's blooded. He's blooded and he's accepted as an orc, but he's also accepted as a cop, which I dig. I like that journey where he's just trying to be his most authentic self, and he just happens to be 2, quote, things that shouldn't be in one package. So I like that. And maybe not just like as a character herself. She wasn't in there a lot, but I, like you were saying, Tom, Numi as the bad guy. I just thought that she was cool. I've always been a fan of Numi anyway, but it was just it was a really cool bad guy.
When she
was terrifying.
Numi Rapace is like very beautiful and elegant in a way that's very non-traditional to American, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came in, I was like, damn, girl, I seen you right there. But also because she had this like also power about her too. But also because like she didn't wear like, you know, a skirt, a pencil, blah blah, but she also didn't
wear
wear
a pantsuit with a lacy like
it wasn't like the Men in Black
thing.
pantsuit, you know what I mean? It was like a stylish suit that I was like, damn girl, that's some queen shit, you know what I'm saying? You know, I was like, and then so like when she went to go kill Ike Barinholtz, I was like, damn girl, fucking move on that, you know? I mean, she has such a way where she like it's poise. It's poise.
When she grabs on the car and like slides with it in those. That was cool.
And I'll say, freaking David Ayer is really, really good at setting up like gunfights and action sequences. Like hands down, like urban action sequences where it's like real. There's shooting. It's in a neighborhood. Like he's, I think, probably the top of the class. And also shout out to Eric Barinholtz because he always plays like a asshole, but like in real life on Twitter, he's like super liberal and progressive.
Well,
Just like he always plays like the terrible human being. So you have Layla and you have Nick. For me, yeah, it's gonna be Nick Jacoby, and then second, is going to be, this is like a side character, just to shout him out. I don't even know his name, but I really I liked the human federal agent who was just like,
oh, the red-haired guy?
yeah, he was just like so brutish, but then also he'd ask all the very vessel questions of the story. He's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What's gonna happen? And then like, but then when he's up to someone, he's like, I'm gonna kick your ass. I'm like, oh shit. Like he's a kind of nonsense ass kicking cop, It's like, he's not a no nonsense, but he is a little nonsense. And like how he just like, there is a little bit of entertainment in a very terrible thing of like, badgering the witnesses or all that stuff. So like he just plays that very, very well. And I was just like, I want to see more of him. More of him, please. Like, I would love to see that. But yeah, so those are my favorite characters. And I mean, Jacoby, like what Josh said, the battle of duality is something I resonate with a lot. And I think Joel Edgerton really brings that to the forefront really well in his good manneredness, but also in the sense of like he can be frustrated too. But also he's just like a all around good ass dude.
Yeah.
He's a good ass dude. And then like, Ward says like, you're a good cop. And I was like, so now we get into the hot part, the part that Josh hates the most because it's very uncomfortable for him. Qualms and gripes if you are of
the grippy gripes,
a different orc of a different clan.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, right. So who wants to go first with some qualms, Caitlin? Who wants to go first, and why is it Caitlin?
What a very close-ended question.
Oh my. All right. So for me, I'm aware. The two things are kind of like a broader thing. There were a lot of moles in this for me. Like a lot. It just left things really open-ended that I was like, what? But what are you? Okay. And it's gone. All right. Like
Do you have an example
the
of
bald,
one?
yeah, the bald elf guy, like hovers his hand over the baby. I think he's gonna kill it, but with how culty they are about a lot of things, I was like, is he gonna is that a vessel for the Dark Lord now? Like, that was just like it didn't look like a murder type movement. It just looked like my hand is over this baby now. Like,
I don't know if I caught more of it or I inferred more of it, but it looked like he was going to suffocate the baby. And I was like, oh, that baby's dead.
That didn't make sense to me because they were totally fine with him at first. And then all of a sudden, baby cries. Now everybody dies. Like,
oh, well, no, it's when they said that there is an elf girl that went with them. And the elf girl kills everyone. That's when it switched.
I suppose. I don't know. That was just a weird thing for me. The gunfire with the four cops when they were like setting off firecracker things everywhere, but there were only like, because it's only Ward shooting at the four cops, but there was like there were like bullets pinging off of everything behind them, which didn't make sense to me. Huh?
Because he's getting shot
at. No. Behind the four cops.
Oh, okay.
They had.
I was gonna say behind Ward. Bullets. I saw that.
Yeah, that one made sense because it's like you got one guy and there's four people shooting at him. But like behind the four cops, there was like ping, 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 ping all over the place. But then it was like later Jacoby's like, yeah, it was like he shot one bullet. And I'm like, no, there's all these little fireworks going off literally all over the screen behind them while also being like,
you see the individual bullets.
Yeah, so it's like, why is one like 15 feet away over there? Why is that one over there? Like,
because magic. Because he's a bright.
Yeah, that's it. Magic.
It's magic.
No, yeah, that's like a continuity thing. I would think.
Yeah, I think so.
But also, it's a sense of like, one, it doesn't make sense logically, but two, it's like it looks. I guarantee it looks better. It just like looks more cinematic.
Oh yeah, no, it looks cooler. But for me, it was just like but the grab and and it just made me think, oh, he's a bad shot. Like it made me think he was a stormtrooper for a second.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
he's got
you could just
stormtrooper syndrome.
Yeah, he got stormtrooper syndrome, and he's supposed to be murdering these people.
and cops had the
So-
red shirt syndrome.
Yeah, they really did.
Just get
So it was a lot of little things like that because I noticed it all over the place of like extra special effects that didn't need to be happening were just like going all over the screen, and that it's very hard for me to not pay attention to those things. And like moments that I feel like needed more time or a little bit more explanation got cut really short. I had to like go back through a couple of scenes when they were explaining like plot stuff, being like, wait, who did what? Like, and this is relating to who? So it was a lot of moles and feeling like because this film was like Bad Boys, Lord of the Rings, and a buddy cop movie. Like, I mean, well, Bad Boys is a buddy cop movie. I just forgot that was the genre, the time that I learned what that genre is. But like, I had a hard time like tone switching because like for me and what I'm used to with fantasy is you've got that like seriousness of fantasy and then you've got buddy cop. So it's very hard to mesh the fantasy and the buddy cop together.
The one like several sentiments I've seen is that it gets compared to Lord of the Rings, which I think is a little bit of a
it's not
a little
fair.
problematic.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's very
It's
like
not
I'm
fair.
comparing
That's
Burger
not what
King.
this movie is.
Burger King, which is like in all intents and purposes makes a pretty good burger if you're hungry, versus a Michelin star restaurant. It's like it's not fair. But I would say like this, where a lot of people are like Lord of the Rings versus this. It's like, what if Gimli and Legolas had their own movie? And they're races that don't like each other, right? And elves thinks they're better than dwarves.
But at the very end of Lord of the Rings, it's like, I never thought I would die fighting next to an elf. And it's like, how about die fighting next to a friend? And that happens in Bright, where, but not in the same degree, right? And
Yeah.
so it's, to me, it's also different because Lord of the Rings is a little bit more hard fantasy versus this is a little bit more modern take and spin
Soft
of it.
fantasy.
It's more, and I think the purpose of Bright is a little bit to just blend the two, but not have the, I guess, tent poles of both. You know, it doesn't have to be where it's like it's drugs versus like, and it's a sex ring, or versus like it's the prophecy that we all know was actually very recent that we just got through this war, and so it plays a little milquetoast between the two for its pros and cons.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what the issue was for me tone wise, is like because I have the like extremes of those constantly playing in my head, because that's what is being drawn from. It's very hard for me to appreciate it not including those in my mind at all, since they're already there. So if I had never seen either of those things before, I would probably have a completely different view on this movie. But I have those things glaring in my head. And I also have like, I'm used to the dopey, bald, creaturey man being Dave Bautista. So like the whole time I was like, this isn't Dave Bautista. I like this guy a lot. I really like what he was doing. I loved all of his performance and everything. But every now and again, I'll be like, oh, wait, it's not Dave Bautista. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Like,
I think that's actually like what I think a lot of the critics were like honing in on, is that like they have these huge polarizations between the two genres,
Right.
and that this film, tries to blend the two. It runs the risk of having that criticism, but also I think it's a risk that I think more filmmakers need to take, where there needs to be martial arts in the urban world. There needs to be lightsabers within fantasy. There needs to be, like if you're just going to let the world stay where they are, it's cool to have them, but then it shouldn't be out of the norm to imagine if they were to coexist. Like,
yeah.
Harry Potter should be able to fight Luke Skywalker. Why not?
Yeah.
How?
I mean, I think it just didn't go deep enough in either direction.
Mhm.
Like it was very firmly buddy cop, but it was commentary on like racial injustice at the same time.
With a skin of fantasy.
With a skin of
Yeah.
fantasy. And it didn't go deep enough in the fantasy for me to fully feel immersed in it. I remember actively feeling during like a good chunk of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, this is like the time where it's like, yes, fantasy, action, buddy cop. You have done all three. Great job. I'm loving it. And then I fell out again. Like,
This is why I picked you, Caitlin.
I mean, fair, but it didn't carry the whole way through. And I think it is one of those things where if I watched it again and again, I'm sure it would grow on me in fondness and I would find new things about it all the time. But I think just the fantasy skin was not deep enough for me to be able to appreciate it in a way that it sounds like you and Josh do.
Well, I was just gonna
Go ahead,
say, because mine has to kind of do with that, is that it suffers the thing that it's a movie, and it's
Not a series.
It's not a series, and that's the thing for me is that it probably would have been better suited as a series
I
where
agree with
things
that.
can be
Built
because there's a
upon.
lot that could be built within this, and
Mhm.
because it is a new concept to me into the world, is that maybe we need a little bit more time with this. It's fascinating to me. I think it's a really, really cool idea. And the things that you want to introduce with this world, it would have been really cool to have more time with those things instead of having something that has so much weight on it, so to speak, of like trying to introduce a lot of different concepts in terms of how big this world is and what can exist in this world and the problem with the wand or what's a part of society in this world. It's like it would have been really cool if we got like a 12 episode season or a 10 episode season where it's like we could have gone to each of those worlds and seen like,
yeah.
oh, okay, you're giving it to me.
What were the
you're-
9
Yeah.
races and stuff like that? What was the
Yeah.
war like? And I think that's why
building
I'm
on prophecies and giving us a little like seeing all the street art one after another. I was like, okay, the Dark Lord is showing up, and then he never showed up, and I was like, oh wait.
Well, that's why I am really excited for Dune. At the time of this recording, Dune is going to, as a film, but then they're also going to have a companion series.
Mm.
And that's going to explore everything that's outside the Dune film or the Dune books.
good.
And so,
That's
like,
good. Dune
I-
is a lot.
that's what I really like. And I mean, I'll let Josh do his qualms, but then I'll talk about my stuff later.
Because I don't want to do more than 2 qualms. One qualm I linked to Caitlin. My second qualm, I really like the character of Nick. And I think that though it delivers comedic relief at times, I had a problem with him being such an idiot compared to like
Yeah.
the other orcs. Like when we were in like the church, the boss of the orcs seemed kind of an intelligent
He's
person.
so on top of it.
And I was like, but Nick comes off as not, yes, he's sweet, but he kind of comes off as an idiot at times. And I'm like,
Well, he is a new recruit.
no, like an idiot. Like he just didn't seem very smart.
Yeah.
And I comparing it to like, I was just kind of like, it's felt like a trope to me where it was like cliche where like, oh, he's an idiot and that's why he says
He's an
funny
idiot, and
things.
that's
And I
okay.
was like, it was just for me. I was like, I love his character in it, but he's almost a joke compared to,
Oh, yeah.
instead of being like, because he has such a cool storyline to me that of this dichotomous nature that he has. I'm like, man, that's really cool, but he's an idiot.
It's
Like,
it's different because
He's like a
it's
child.
like Bad Boys, you have the two who are kind of on par, and then you have Lethal Weapon, and you have, the old vetted and then the young hotshot. But then the young hotshot is actually not, he's just brash. He just does dumb shit, but he's not stupid.
Yeah.
Whereas like Bright, you have Jacoby who is like straight from the academy. And so like he doesn't have the street awareness of what's going on. But what he does bring is like a diversity thing. And it's a little political. And that's why they kind of spin it in the way where like there is a lot of politics at play, but also like, and I think it's kind of like to the point to throw in the good heartedness out of it, where like knowledge comes with jadedness and purity comes with, good intention, or it comes with a little bit of like naivete.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it plays into that. I see that.
Yeah.
Is that
But
your only
that's-
2?
Well, our rule is 2, so
Yeah,
I'm
2.
only
I'm
going
just
to do 2.
I'm just saying. For me, I actually have issues with Ward as a character.
Really?
Will Smith's character, because I see what they were trying to do with his character of like he's the one that has to redeem himself. And it's interesting if you look up the name, Ward, it's like to be under the guardianship of someone else, and then you look up Jacoby, which is if you look at the root, it means to supplant somebody and to replace them. So like trying to see like if those name plays came into it, it doesn't really. So those are just names. But
I did all this extra homework. Was it helpful?
yeah,
No.
and I mean, to me, again, I'm very particular in like the naming of my characters, and so like if they're not very traditional, they better mean something. Like Ezra Bridger from Star Wars Rebels, he bridges the worlds together. Like it sounds good. It's like that's smart. But anyway, so Ward, they introduce him with his family and his daughter, and that his daughter is upset with him being a cop because this is done, post 9/11, and the idea of police brutality and stuff like that is pretty prevalent. And she says nobody likes cops, and I think that's a very interesting thing to use because there's a lot that Ward has to live for, right? But then in the end of the day, his main journey and thesis of the film is that he has to take in Jacoby and learn that he is an equal and he's not a detriment, and that he has something to offer, and that you can trust orcs, even though at the very beginning of the film he tells that, oh well, orcs are equal, not because even though they're different. And then you have him say fairies' lives don't matter today, and it's like, I don't know what the idea of equality is a little bit, because you don't give a shit for one life form versus another. But if you think of it like fairies as like rats and rodents, then it's like cool. But also, the idea of what race is in this universe, like how different are orcs to fairies, and then what's the difference between fairies to humans? What's the level of that? And that comes to like a world building piece, but more just in Ward's character, like he has a lot to live for. But then they have him where he's kind of like the old, rugged, Bruce Willis-y, broken down cop. And, Jacoby's like, you are a good cop, or he says something like, are we friends? And then Ward says, you don't want me as a friend. And it's like, but why not? You have a good family life. You're trying to sell your house. You're looking at retiring. Like, you haven't fucked up your police record. It looks like you're not about that brutality life. So it's interesting that what they were trying to do, and I think that's a little bit of like, we can't have Will Smith play, and I say Bruce Willis because I think of the John McClane character, and that's what this kind of is, because John McClane is like got nothing. He's got nothing, and that's what this kind of is, where it's like the characterization has nothing, but the first thing he does is call his wife leave town, and that's all we see. So it's like cool, and we don't know a lot from Jacoby, and it's because we're supposed to use Ward as a surrogate for the audience to learn more about orc culture and blooded and orcish and all this stuff, where it should have maybe shown that Jacoby has the family and he has something to live for, yet he's willing to die on the line. And I think David Ayer does this really well with End of Watch. But then, so you have the guy who has something to live for, and the guy who says like, you don't want to be friends with me, I'm a bad guy. And he's like, I used to be like you. I used to be a good cop, but now I just pretend to be a good person. And it's like, but you are a good person. You're a dad, and you're a wife, a husband, and you're trying to sell your house, and you're trying to do right by your family, and you don't want to turn in this guy for shitty reasons. So it's like, you are kind of good, but you think you're bad on yourself. And then he tells Jacoby, it's like, you're hard on yourself because the world's hard on you. And it's like, but you're also hard on yourself. And I was like, maybe there should have been something a little bit more between that. But Will Smith is just like super charismatic and enjoyable to watch regardless. So it's like, you kind of go to sleep with those issues. It's like the character doesn't match the performance. So it's very interesting. And then the second qualm is, I think it's more in the sense of and it's something I really wanted to stay away from, but it's something that I think I do kind of agree with. And it's not like a big qualm. It's not like I condemn it because of this, but it's like, I could see that. There is like a conversation of characters are used a lot more to deliver concepts. But the daughter, everyone hates cops. The four cops who are particularly white, except one Asian woman, are the corrupt people. The federal agents are just like the out of town people who are impending and actually helpful. There isn't a lot of like characters are doing something outside of their function narratively.
Yeah.
And I think that
Deliverers of plot.
delivers a plot, but also delivers of like what the world is and not what the characters are. Like characters, technically, if it's really well fleshed out, they are products of their environment, not the environment as a product of the character. And this feels a little bit like the characters are products of writing. And it's like this character represents this, and it's only
This
going
is
to
exposition man number 1.
yeah, they're only
Yeah.
going to serve that function. And even though they're like well dressed in a way where it's like this feels like I could see this kind of person. This feels like I could see this kind of person. It's the difference between, I think, a stereotype versus an archetype. Where it's like they play this archetype versus they play this stereotype. And this one has a little bit too much on the archetypal stance, where it's just like, you don't have like a Transformers where you have the black robot who's like, yeah, what's up? And you're like, oh God, why? Where it's like, it's federal agent man in a suit. It's like, there is cool assassin person who's bald. Of course they are. You can't have
Of course they are.
You can't have a dude who's got a ponytail for no reason, apparently. Like it's that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, there is gangster because they're a gangster. That guy's got tattoos.
Grungy prophecy man.
Yeah, it's like there's tattoos everywhere, so he's probably this way. And they serve in a sense where it's like, cool, this is the pressure. And then it serves for the genre, but I don't know if it serves for a fleshed out novelization, which isn't what the film is. The film is a film. It has a beginning and it has an end. So it gives you all the ideas, but then it doesn't let you kind of attach yourself to them. It lets you just be like, oh, I understand the conversation that's happening at every point. So like, that's why with the gun shooting part and all those sparks flying off, it's like, it's not about him killing people. It's about him saying no to police corruption, saying no to killing my own, my partner who's a good guy in order for me to make financial gain. And so that's why it's such an important cinematically shot scene that makes no fucking sense. That's why I'm like, and that's why I forgive a lot of things where it's like, I understand the conversation you're trying to have, even though you're stuttering along the way. Because you're throwing them at me, baby. It's hot and heavy. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm smelling what you're stepping in. Like, I get it. But yeah, those are my two qualms. Is Ward as a character kind of doesn't make sense. And then the archetypal versus stereotypal characters are a little ham-fisted. So yeah, now we go into the rating. And so for drama
Who could
purposes,
possibly be the grump?
I know. Someone who took 20 minutes to go over their qualm of gunfire. Anyway, so Josh, you are first because you have no
Thanks for
votes on
minimizing.
you.
Love it.
I'm going to give this a 3.8.
3.8 for the Josh. Okay. Oh, I'm next.
Yeah, that's right. You are, Tom.
I was gonna say Kaylee because I missed the days where I was voted a lot, but they would vote me for things that's like The Dark Knight Rises. Like, why would I be the one?
Because it was funny.
So for me, this actually it would be a solid 3.7. 3.7 for me. And I think I was like, is this a thing where it's like, because I really, really enjoy the way it's shot, the cultural aspect. It's just so much LA in it, where it's like it feels like any other David Ayer film, except they slap on a little bit of the overbearing orcish cultural nuance of like racism, which was kind of fun, and it got my parents to be like, "Oh, fantasy stuff," and I'm like, finally, because they only just want to watch fucking Denzel kill a bunch of people, and I'm like, can you watch something like different outside of the
Not
genre?
that.
And like something with magic involved. And so I appreciate that, but it's not in the masterpiece.
I mean,
world.
for me to explain a little bit, I mean, I really liked a lot about it. But there are some things about it that kind of make me not need to watch it again. I'm excited for the sequel. I'm interested to see it in the hands of a different director. So
Michael
it
Bay.
is one of those things that it's like, oh, this is really cool. I don't really need to watch it again, but it's not totally terrible either. So that's one of those. Yeah. Caitlin?
And actually, in all mine, I actually would watch it again. I'm like, this is really enjoyable for me. And not saying yours is lesser or anything, but I was like, oh, you know what? I could just turn this bitch on anytime.
You're just your personal flavor. That's all. 3.4.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought
I know-
everyone.
What everybody thought.
I appreciate the conversation. I get what they were doing. But the immersion I took out. I was out multiple times thinking about, it wasn't like I couldn't appreciate how they did things because too much was happening. Like there were too many layers happening all at once. I understood them. Like I knew what they were going for.
But things were happening at a breakneck speed sometimes.
It was
where just
breakneck
like,
speed.
Next fact.
I think this is going to be something where when Bright 2 comes out, I'll probably like that movie a lot.
Because it's done all
I
the
got
heavy lifting here.
slapped with all of the information. I think it could have been in a different format. And if this was a show, I would probably love that. I would be all about it. And they would have time to visit each individual aspect of the problems that it's tackling. But it just happened so quickly. And there was prophecy stuff and Dark Lord and the way that they were shooting things was to infer bigger story stuff. And it was just it was too much all at once. That's the crux of it all. Too much all at once.
I was actually going to say that the whole break of immersion thing. If you watch the latter half of the film versus the first half of the film, they feel like two different movies.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like the latter half because I've said before, fantasy is not my shit sometimes. I
See?
enjoy it, but I enjoy way more urban, modern, shit's happening.
And I enjoy the latter half rather than the first.
Yeah, so
But
it's very
it got too confusing for the latter half because there was so much happening in the first half that they were trying to explain of set up how the world works, that it was harder to enjoy the second half as more fantasy because so much cool stuff was happening, but it just didn't feel,
Succinct.
the through line was a little harder for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, there you have
well,
it.
I'm a grump. I'm
You
a
are the
grump.
grump like I thought.
Shout out to Mitchell and Andrew who voted for Caitlin.
Y'all know me
And
too
also
well.
shout out to Josh, who also voted for Caitlin.
Yeah.
And also shout out to me, who also voted for Caitlin.
I'm not shouting.
We're making
y'all
shout
out.
outs to the Nerd On Nation.
I'll shout
Tom.
out.
That's
I'll
true.
shout out
That's
the
true.
Nerd On Nation, but y'all can sip your tea elsewhere.
Awesome. Everybody at home, thank you so much for listening. That has been our conversation on Bright. Reach out to us. Let us know what you thought about Bright. Slip and slide into those DMs, as Tom says. And
And
other
thank you,
people say.
Chase, for
Yeah.
reaching out and recommending this one.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, the more you guys say, as Tom likes to say, it's the less I say it now.
I know.
And it's like
Tom
I have
likes
not,
to do things out of spite. Just
I have yet
fuck
to
y'all.
say it in a long time, and I'm like, I get quoted a lot, but I haven't said it.
Yeah,
in
you
like
do.
years.
That's how it works.
But no, yeah. Let us know what you think, and also comment on and rate and review and all that stuff, baby. And as Josh will drink, it's at we love you guys. And go ahead, Josh.
Thank you so much
Padding
for
for
listening.
time.
We appreciate you all. Yeah, as Tom so flippantly sled.
Slez.
I slay, bitch.
Blah.
Slays. Do stop by, rate and review us wherever you do. Tell us what your favorite episode has been, favorite moments. These kinds of things, like Caitlin has said in the past, these reviews it makes us feel warm and fuzzy. And when we get
It
them, we all
does.
celebrate. We screenshot it and we share it with each other. And we're like, this
Oh
is
my God, did you
exciting.
guys see?
They feel like a mama bird chewing up some food and throwing up into the baby bird's mouth because it's nutritious for us and allows us to grow.
Oh. Or it's like a warm hug. How about that one?
It's either
Doesn't make you throw up in your mouth a little bit like Tom's did.
That's how they eat. That's how they survive. Don't animal habitat shame.
Josh,
don't bum my
Help.
mellow. Wow. Well, thank you so much for listening. Share us with your friends and family. That does help us grow. If you're new to Nerd On, welcome. Bienvenue.
Hi.
Do stop by our website, nerdon.tv. It has all of the information of all of the things that we do, and we do a lot. We have 2 YouTube channels. We make gaming content. We also are on Twitch pretty much every day. And if we're not on every day, there's probably a reason, but usually it's every day. But yeah, that's been it. Thank you so much. We love you all. You know the drill. As always, nerd on.
Ending broadcast.